The New York Mets somehow outpitched Zach Wheeler to avoid the Phillies celebrating in their house, and they saved themselves that 2-game lead against the Braves heading into a huge series this week. I will break down all of it. Edwin Diaz, what a performance. Let's talk about on this special edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right state can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. So head over to Atlanta and watch the Mets potentially clinch against the Braves this week. Booking.com is the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. All right. The heart's still racing a little bit after watching that game. What a performance by the New York Mets. I mean, I almost don't know where to start, but I'll say this. Everything about that game was playoff atmosphere. It was so awesome. And the narratives that were intertwined throughout. Pete Alonso, we were waiting all game for a big moment. It didn't come for him. It came from Brandon Nimmo, but regardless, that was sort of an undertone throughout the game. You had Zach Wheeler with the chance to pitch the Phillies to their first division title since 2011 against his former team on the Citi Field mound, and Wheeler was great. I mean, Zach Wheeler showed you why. For my money, he's still the best pitcher in baseball. Chris Sale, Tarek Skubal this year, you could say those guys have had a better season, but since Zach Wheeler became a Philly, as much as it's frustrating for Mets fans, especially those like myself, who back in 2019 campaigned every week for this guy to stay a New York Met, as frustrating as it is to say, he's the best pitcher in baseball. We saw it tonight. You're not going to get a lot of opportunities against Zach Wheeler. But the Mets were engaged the entire time. They took advantage of the few mistakes that he did make, and they outpitched Zach Wheeler. Now, you're not going to outpitch Zach Wheeler with Tylor Megill, though Tylor Megill deserves a lot of credit because he did get the ball rolling. Some of the performances that Megill has had have been unbelievable, not just lately, but across his Mets career. The combined no-hitter, the way he pitched in April that season in 2022, he just does rise to the occasion in some big moments, and he was really good today. First inning, it got dicey. Okay, he gave up 3 hits and a walk. Throughout that in the middle, he struck out Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper, but he ends up in a situation where 1 run was already in, bases loaded, 2 outs. He was able to get JT Realmuto to line out, but it was on a fastball that was right down the middle. So this game could have gone a lot differently if that first inning, if Realmuto squares that ball up better, or, ends up pulling it instead of hitting it dead center, whatever it was good enough, and the Mets survived that inning. And honestly, it's one of the biggest turning points in this game because had the Phillies hung a crooked number there, they probably win going away because that's how good Zach Wheeler was. But the Mets get a break in that inning. And then they get on the board first. They did not score in the first inning. Jose Iglesias extended his hitting streak, though, to 16 games. With 2 outs in the second inning, Mark Vientos got one of those mistakes, a hanging sweeper from Zach Wheeler. He ripped a double. Good hustle, by the way, because Johan Rojas made a diving stop. And we've seen Vientos get thrown out before. I was fully expecting him to get gunned down at second, but he got there. And then Tyrone Taylor, who's now the starting center fielder of the New York Mets, or at least he should be with the way he's playing lately, he got another clutch hit, base hit, driving at Vientos. Bad throw, so there was no play at the plate again. I was worried about Vientos' legs, but it didn't matter. Mets get up 1-0. The Mets tied the game. Megill settled in, though. Second and third inning, retired the side in order. Fourth inning, gives up a leadoff single to Nick Castellanos, who advanced to scoring position on a wild pitch. Megill strikes out Bryson Stott. JT Realmuto grounds out. Acuna makes the play that keeps the runner at second. He then walks Brandon Marsh, and that sets up an at-bat against Johan Rojas, the 9th hitter. Tylor Megill gets a big out to end the threat, and I tweeted this out right when it happened. I said, all right, you shake his hand. Thank you, Tylor Megill. You got through 4 innings. You survived. It was at 83 pitches, gave up 1 run on 4 hits, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. That was it, okay? Do not let him face the top of the lineup again. And this was a playoff game. That's the way Carlos Mendoza managed it, because there was no indication that the Mets were going to score until Zach Wheeler exited the game. They go to Phil Maton. Maton, under the radar MVP of this game, 2 huge innings of scoreless relief, retired all 6 batters that he faced, get you through 6. And then Brandon Nimmo is the one who steps up. And there's a lot of guys who have stepped up in Francisco Lindor's absence. A lot of different guys have had moments. Tyrone Taylor, Jose Iglesias, Pete Alonso's had his moments. Luis Acuna has been unbelievable. Some of the plays he made tonight at shortstop, not that there was anything super flashy, but the one that he made in the 8th inning, if I'm not mistaken, right, where he has to end the inning with a runner on third base and he fields a ground ball to make that play, takes a lot of stones to do that. So everyone has been chipping in and stepping up, but Brandon Nimmo, as the other leader of this team, all of a sudden has gotten hot at the right time. And he's the one that wins this game for you, because he is hunting a first pitch fastball, knowing that Zach Wheeler wants to get ahead. And he probably remembers Brandon Nimmo from all of his time with the Mets, the guy that would take first pitch. But Nimmo was looking fastball. He got one over the heart of the plate. He was able to get it out just over Nick Castellanos' glove in right field as he tried to leap and rob it. And the Mets take a 2-1 lead. And then from that point on, you wondered, is that going to be it? And if it is, do the Mets have the pitching to get through this game? Jose Butto, dominant in the 7th, struck out 2. I thought he would get the 8th as well. Jose Butto hadn't pitched since Monday. But this wasn't about Jose Butto. Carlos Mendoza knew the significance of this game. For one, again, you're holding off your rival from winning the division in your house. 2, final home game of the season. 3, you take a 2-game lead into this series in Atlanta, you have a chance to win a series and clinch. 2-game lead is huge at this stage when there's only 6 games left to play and you're about to play the team that's right behind you. So after going to Edwin Diaz for 4 outs, he goes to Diaz again in the 8th inning, but to start it off. And I wasn't even sure, was this just face the top of the lineup, or was this, no, finish the game? And it was finish the game, and Edwin Diaz showed you why he was the first reliever in MLB history to get $100 million, because he was brilliant tonight. Lights out. The fastball has that life again. Just blew away Kyle Schwarber with 3 fastballs. Trey Turner gets a blue pit. Tyrone Taylor just couldn't get in on that ball enough to make the catch. But then here comes Bryce Harper. Edwin Diaz blows him away too, and got one of the rarest check swing strikeouts you'll ever see. I don't know if I've ever even seen this before. I can't think if I have. When Bryce Harper struck out on a check swing, he started to walk to the dugout. You've seen guys who start walking to first base when they think they just took the 4th ball. But Bryce Harper might as well have called himself out. He said, nope, I struck out. Just starts walking to the dugout before the third base umpire officially rings him up. And then Alec Boehm hits that ground ball I talked about to Acuna, and the Mets are able to get through that inning. 8th inning, I thought we were set up bottom of the 8th for a big moment from Pete Alonso, which was sort of set up by Brandon Nimmo, because you have Jose Iglesias lead things off, king of the infield single, king of the multi-hit game right now. He gets on. Zach Wheeler about to face Brandon Nimmo and still under 100 pitches. That's when Rob Thompson pulled him. Didn't want to see Wheeler face Nimmo again after Nimmo took him deep. So that brings in lefty Matt Strahm. Strahm strikes out Nimmo, but it was a great matchup for Pete Alonso. Left on right. He gets ahead into a hitter's count, 2-0. And he was all over that pitch. And if you were in the ballpark, if you're watching at home, if you're listening on the radio, when you heard the crack of the bat, because of the narratives, you had to think, this is it, right? This is going to be the huge 2-run homer, puts the Mets up big, and we can all breathe easy. But he yanked it foul. Another good take to get into a 3-1 count, but rolls one over, so he isn't able to come through in that spot. Does beat it out to give JD Martinez a chance, beats out the double play, but JD Martinez strikes out himself. So it was back to Edwin Diaz in the 9th inning, and again, Edwin Diaz delivered in a massive way. He gets a fly out to open up the inning. He walks Bryson Stott. So again, you're dealing just like you did when Trey Turner got on, with a speedy runner who steals second, steals third, and steals third on a play that could have been just a disaster. This is one of those moments that tells me that this Mets team has something special, because Mets teams of the past, even say the 2022 Mets, good Mets teams that didn't have the vibes in the right place, when JT Realmuto strikes out for the second out of the inning and Francisco Alvarez tries to gun down Bryson Stott stealing third on the pitch, and he spikes one into third base, I mean, you thought for sure that ball was going to bounce into the outfield, Stott was going to come in, tie game, and the Mets were going to lose. But they had luck on their side tonight, and that ball just popped right up. And Stott couldn't go on it. Mark Vientos had no idea where it went, but it pretty much falls into his lap. Mets catch a huge break. There's a walk that makes us all more stressed, put runners at first and third, but it gives a really good matchup for Diaz against Roger Clemens' son, just to add a little more narrative to it. And Diaz blows him away, man. Edwin Diaz, the MVP of this game, unbelievable performance, 6-out save. And now that you're looking at this Mets team that's inching closer and closer to a playoff berth, you can start to dream about what they might do when they get there. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. And a big part of what they can do when they get there is Edwin Diaz in prime form. And tonight, it certainly looked like that was the case. I'll go over that a little more in the next segment. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities, and there's a rival the Mets are about to play. You want to head into Atlanta and see the Mets clinch potentially? I mean, Booking.com, place to go. Hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more. On Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on the site or in the Booking.com app. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. This is where you want to be on Sunday when you're watching the Giants or the Jets. You'll get started too with a $200 in bonus bets. Again, that is $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Whether you place your first or when you place your first $5 bet, you will get that $200 bonus. You don't have to win a bet. It's just there for you. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports book. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. And if you're watching our stream on YouTube or watching the replay, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Goal is to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the season. And maybe, just maybe, we'll have a little bit more season to get those subscribers as the Mets inch closer and closer to a playoff berth. This is exciting stuff. Magic number down to David Wright, down to 5 games. And if you win 2 against the Braves, you get the tiebreaker. So that's an additional game. So you go into the series in Atlanta, and the goal is simple. Win a series, you're in. And then we could talk about all the other stuff once you get to that point. Now, we'll talk about the Braves a little bit in the final segment. But we got to spend some more time on Edwin Diaz, because he had that Corbin Carroll blow up, right? The Corbin Carroll grand slam that he gave up. And let me actually pull up the stats since then, because I didn't have those researched out before I started recording here. What Edwin Diaz has done lately is unbelievable. And you can just specifically look at what he's done in September. Obviously, there's a little bit before September where he was great. After that Corbin Carroll grand slam, there was 2 scoreless innings where he struck out 2. Big one to get that save against the Diamondbacks to win that series the day after the grand slam he gave up, and then one against the White Sox. But his September numbers now after tonight, the 2 strong innings, he's given up 1 run over 11 1/3. He's only walked 3, one of them tonight, and he has struck out 21 batters. All of a sudden, this is looking like 2022 Edwin Diaz. And the usage of Edwin lately. Carlos Mendoza has said they're going to ride their closer. Well, they're riding their closer. Okay? You have him go up against Philly in a first game where they didn't have to go to him, but you wanted to lock down a win. Easy inning, 12 pitches. Then you talk about yesterday. Need him for 4 outs. Goes out there, gets those 4 outs. Today, 1-run game. Top of the lineup. Jose Butto looked great. Carlos Mendoza had every excuse to leave Butto in there and try to squeeze an out or two. But I think what he told us is if we're going to lose this game, we're going to lose it with our closer on the mound. And that confidence to show that in Edwin Diaz, and for him to go out and throw 30 pitches and get you 6 outs, 4 strikeouts, going through the teeth of the Phillies lineup, a team that, had they won this game, would have stayed even with the Dodgers for the best record in the National League, a team that will be in October that you could face off with in a playoff series. Yeah, that is playing your ace. And at this point, the Mets have 2 aces. They got Sean Manaea to headline their rotation, and they got Edwin Diaz. And before the start of the season, I did a podcast where I broke down the top 10 best players on the New York Mets, most impactful. Francisco Lindor was obviously 1. I think Brandon Nimmo was 2. And I might have gone with Pete Alonso 3, but it got to a point, this is when Kodai Senga was healthy, where I had to say, all right, who's the most important pitcher? Is it Senga or is it Edwin Diaz? Now, I did not have the knowledge that we wouldn't see Kodai Senga, and there's some rough news on that I can actually talk about in the next segment, but I went with Edwin Diaz because of moments like this and because of what it means to have a lockdown closer. The thing is, if Edwin Diaz was pitching like this, pitching like 2022 Edwin Diaz all season long, the Mets might be in this division race, okay? Because there's been some games that Diaz has blown that would have potentially changed things. And if you want to get crazy, dream about what would have happened last weekend had the New York Mets swept the Phillies, and they were in position to do that. They were right in there for all those games in Philly. But now in the span of a week, you've played them 7 times and you won 4. So, if that was a NLCS, Mets would have won it. But to win this series that way, it shows you this team is ready for the big moments in October. They got everything you need. They got to get there still. The Braves are not going to go down easy. Okay, it's kind of like, if you're watching the NBA, right, and you have a champion who is down 3-1 in a series. That game 5, they're going to come out swinging. So winning the first game here in this 3-game set, that's going to be huge for the Mets, especially because Chris Sale's not pitching until game 2. And we'll do a full series preview for Tuesday's episode of Locked On Mets leading in. But you really think about where the Mets are at here. If they can get in, if they can win this series, if they can take the Braves' best punch on the chin, beat them in the series, and clinch in Atlanta the way the Phillies wanted to clinch in New York, for one, that's going to exercise the demon of the 2022 Mets, which is great. But further, you then go to Milwaukee. Maybe you're playing the Brewers. Maybe you're playing the Padres in the wild card round. Who knows? But you're setting yourself up for that wild card round. And you got Sean Manaea who can pitch a game 1. You got a Luis Severino who can pitch a game 2. And pick your poison between David Peterson or Jose Quintana. But what you'll see in that 3rd game in particular is a game like this one if it comes to it. If it's a do-or-die game, you'll see the Mets rely on their bullpen. And if they will have a rested Phil Maton, Jose Butto, Reed Garrett, and then Edwin Diaz capable of giving you 6 huge outs if you need to pitch for your life, the Mets can win any game against any team. So Edwin Diaz is a massive game changer for the New York Mets. He will allow them to win big games in October and maybe make a run. And if they do, whether it's this season or any other season across the life of this deal, it'll be worth every penny for the big outs that this guy can get. What a performance by Edwin Diaz. That was, up there with any of the saves he's ever had. Honestly, you might put that right now. I'd have to really look and think back because it's hard to remember You remember the games that he blows more than the games that he saved. But off the top of my head, like, can I think of a situation that was more significant than Edwin Diaz in a game like this? All eyes on you, Sunday Night Baseball, 6 huge outs against what's been throughout the season the best team in the National League, and going through the heart of their lineup. That's as good as it's going to get. And again, it really does bode well for your hopes in October. But to get there, you still got to get through the Braves. And I want to talk about that series a little bit. Full previews coming in a future episode. But the Braves had an interesting game today that I want to talk about. We'll give you the rest of your NL wildcard update on Kodai Senga. So all of that coming in just a minute. First, though, another word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. So you can turn $10 into $1,000. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB, and you're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. Again, that's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus that's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today. And also, if you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. That is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways and get the live graphics sent to your phone each day. So if you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, again, find that link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now, there was a world where the Mets could have gone up 3 games today. And I tried to reverse jinx it on yesterday's show, or I guess as some of you are watching the live stream, today's show this morning, where I said it's impossible. There's no chance, right? The Braves can't possibly lose to Grant McCaughan and the Miami Marlins. McCaughan being a, minor league pitcher that's on a big league team who has an ERA over 7 this year. And the Braves almost lost, okay? They jumped out to a 1-0 lead. Marlins score a couple times. They make it a 2-1 game. Braves score 2 in the 5th, 1 in the 6th, take a 4-2 lead. And the Marlins had some opportunities mixed in there as well. Then they finally break through. Connor Norby, Jesus Sanchez, each homer to tie the game in the 6th. But the Braves score another run in the 7th. Narrowly hold on to win. The Marlins were 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position. And there was one opportunity where it was bases loaded, nobody on. They just didn't score. So really frustrating. You can't expect the Marlins to do it for you. But, man, it looked like they were going to today. And that would have made this just the best possible day. But you know what? Maybe that's not how it's supposed to happen. Maybe you're not supposed to have it handed to you. And instead, you got to go into Atlanta and earn it. And again, exercise that demon from 2022. It's a different team. It is. It's not Max Scherzer. Who is pitching in that series? Max Scherzer. I think it was the same wild card series, right? It was the second to last. Pretty much the exact same thing. Different stakes, division on the line. Both teams are going to make the playoffs instead of this one, which is just who makes the playoffs. But if you remember that series, the Mets lined it up. You had DeGrom, Scherzer, and Chris Bassett, and they got swept. So all of us are thinking about it. I'm just going to say it. That's what sets the stage. That's the narrative that you're going up against. But this is not the 2022 Mets. The 2022 Mets were a team very similar to the Phillies of this year, where they got off to a great start. They played well throughout, but it's not what this Mets team has been. What this Mets team has been is the best team in baseball over a 100-game span. And they're hot at the right time. They had a little bit of a skid after an incredible June and July. The beginning of August, they had that really tough West Coast trip. And you wondered about them. You really did. You said, all right, is this sustainable? But they have now turned it right back on, and they have gone off here to close out August and then to, go through September up to this point, and they are now right there on the doorstep. And I think it's almost better. As much as we like the ease of a 3-game lead, it's almost better to say, go out and win a series. It's that simple. Yeah, if the Mets don't win this series and they take a game, could they still find themselves in the playoffs? Absolutely. The Diamondbacks, they blew one today. They had a huge lead. The Brewers came back, and so the Mets were able to gain a game back. Let me check the wild card standings. I'm pretty sure, is it a game or is it even again? It might be even again. Yeah, it's even again. So, yeah, there's a world where both the Mets and the Braves could get it, right? The Diamondbacks got a series against the Giants. You never know what can happen there. And then they're going to play the Padres. And the Padres will have a chance, potentially, in the division. They're not that far off. The Dodgers winning late today sort of put a little bit of a hiccup there for the Padres, who had a walk-off win and the Dodgers were losing at the time. So it seemed like they were going to be 2 games back heading into this week with a head-to-head coming up. But you never know. Maybe the Padres sweep the Dodgers and that becomes a real race. But what you're going to look at here when it comes to that final series of the season is Padres, Diamondbacks, and the math could completely change when we get there in 4 days. For now, though, what's right in front of you is so simple, and that's beat the Braves in a series, and you're in. That's awesome stuff for this Mets team. There's not a world back in the end of May where we would have thought that'd be possible. And throughout this season, even when the Mets were going good, it still would have seemed unlikely for them to get to this point without Kodai Senga really throwing a pitch. He had the 1 game, but to have done all of this without him, it's a testament to the guys in that rotation and all the different guys that have stepped up throughout this run. And we are in for a really exciting finish. Now, I did mention Senga's name there for a reason. Bad news came in today. He had triceps soreness. That's, I believe, what they called it after or during that start. Triceps tightness might have been what it was in his start in Syracuse. All of us sort of guessed that he didn't pitch a second inning because the Syracuse Mets scored 8 runs and batted around and had a really long inning. So we thought, oh, yeah, they just didn't send him back out there because it was too much in between innings for him to go back out there. Maybe it was going to be, Senga only going 1 anyway because he felt something in his triceps. And unfortunately, you're running out of time for a setback. You cannot expect Kodai Senga to be part of the mix. And the Mets have already ruled him out for the regular season. So they're going to see what happens here. I'm sure he's going to keep working at it. And he is watching a team that looks like one that can potentially make a deep playoff run. And if they do, maybe you see Kodai Senga. But you can't count on that. And you know what? As much as that sucks, he hasn't really been part of this team all year. And so you're going to go into this series, Mets versus Braves, with Sean Manaea and Luis Severino. Those are the aces, so to speak, the frontline guys you're going to go to war with. And they're going to be the same guys you go to war with in October. And if the past 100 games are indication enough, the Mets have what it takes to not just make the playoffs now. They have what it takes to win a playoff series or multiple playoff series. There's no reason this team can't make a run. They have a great defensive team. They have enough guys in the lineup that can come through in the clutch. I mean, just think about 1 through 9. Can you envision a scenario where it's a tie game late and Francisco Alvarez comes up against Robert Suarez against the Padres, right? And he's got to get a hit off of 100. Alvarez is geared up to do that. Mark Vientos can do that. Can Jose Iglesias have a big at bat with a runner on second base and 2 outs? Yeah, the guy's hitting 400 in those situations this year. He's been unbelievable. And lately, this guy gets 2 hits every single night. Your MVP goes down? It's all right. Jose Iglesias, who started the year in Syracuse, yeah, he's just going to play every single day and fill in for the 2 best hitters of the second half for the New York Mets for a large portion there, which was Jeff McNeil and Francisco Lindor. Well, McNeil goes down. Iglesias, you're playing every day at second. Lindor goes down. All right, you're batting leadoff. Just keeps rolling. So this Mets team, man, they've been so much fun. What I'm going to do here, this sort of sets the stage for your Locked On Mets coverage down the stretch, because as these games get more and more important, I want to be recording post-game shows live and then sort of set up a pre-game show if and when we get into playoff baseball. So what you're getting tonight, this is a post-game stream here. I'm going to come back and do an Angels of the Infield episode. So that's a little teaser for what else is going to come your way tomorrow. I'll probably post that maybe a little bit later in the day, but you'll still get a second episode of Locked On Mets tomorrow. Full series preview Tuesday morning leading into that game, or that first game of the series there. I don't know if I'll do a post game after that one, but once we get to the point where the Mets could clinch, I'll go live if and when that happens. So you want to make sure if you're watching this stream right now, you're subscribing to the YouTube channel so you don't miss it if and when I go live down the stretch. If you eventually are listening to this on the replay, make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter or X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every single day. Appreciate you all who continue to tune in. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.